Hi everyone, my name is Vikki Smith. As Joe said, I'm a clinical academic midwife and senior lecturer, so I have a joint role with Northumbria University and Newcastle upon Tyne Hospital Trust. I'm also an NIHR 7870 midwife research leader. So I would like to share with you, Joe introduced me as a successful applicant. I'm also an unsuccessful applicant. So I would like to share with you some sort of personal reflections. I also have experience of supporting others applying to the awards. So some of what I'm going to talk about has been discussed previously, and it's just a reiteration of some of the important points, but also hopefully I'll share some sort of personal reflections and tips that might be useful for you. Okay, so this has been mentioned numerous times during the sessions today, but it can't be emphasized enough. And the reason I want to emphasize the importance of giving yourself enough time is because I have been guilty of not giving myself enough time. And it is a very, very difficult process if you try to put in an application within a few months. It's not impossible, but it is very difficult. And it's not only challenging for yourself, it's very challenging for the others who are supporting you. So please don't do as I did and give yourselves, as suggested, at least 12 months to work up one of these applications. You need time to do meaningful patient, public and community involvement in terms of, getting really insightful feedback on the design and the ideas that you've got for your research. Again, this is personal reflection, but I've learned over the years that really needs to start right at the outset to make this a really meaningful piece of work. You also need time to develop links with other researchers, people who will be involved in your team, and that is critical to the success of your application. You need to obtain all the necessary approvals, as Haida said. The finance processes are critical to the success of your application. And it's really important to ensure you give other people time to help you. You can put in all of the work that you want, and I know what it's like staying up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning writing applications. But it's important that you bear in mind that other people might be helping numerous other applicants and also have their other roles to perform. It's important to enjoy the process to some degree. It can be quite stressful. It's personally trying, but there are really positive aspects of it, irrespective of whether you're successful or not. I know certainly my experience is that I have developed links and relationships with others during the process that have sustained well beyond it. And also it's really important that you don't burn out while you're doing this. I was asked by a supervisor a number of years ago as I was preparing an application whether I was all right. And I sort of looked at him and thought, you're the first person to actually ask me that in this process. But it was a really important question because I was trying very hard to put a lot of work in a short period of time. And there is only so much you can do. I'm sure most of you, like I have other responsibilities and other issues to deal with, both at home and at work. So it's important that you have time within this process to actually step away from it. That gives you time to reflect on what you've written and what you've prepared, and to come back with fresh eyes and reconsider your application. So time cannot be emphasized enough how important it is to start early and to give yourself enough time to build up to the point of submission. As Judith said in her presentation as well, it's critical that you speak to other people who have applied. It's not a time to be reticent or shy. Ask anybody and everybody you can to share their applications. I haven't ever had anyone say to me that they don't want to share an application. Most people are very willing to help, and it's really, really useful to read what others have written, and to just get a feel of what panel members expect and want to see. So just moving on. Again, these are points that have been raised already, but feedback is so important and is so helpful. And it can be quite daunting if it's the first time you've put an application in. I'm sure some of you who are joining us today have experience of it, but if it's the first time, you know, feedback can be quite daunting, it can be quite challenging. But it's important that you know how to use that really well, and to consider it to be a learning opportunity. So feedback from team members, so people you work with and you know well and you collaborate with. Feedback from colleagues who work within a similar field. So if you're considering an application for a piece of research that might be situated within a clinical context, you know, get feedback from those that work in that area as to whether this would actually work in practice. Could you implement a research project within a given environment? Feedback from those with methodological expertise. Again, this is where time is critical, because you may have to reconsider your methodology or rework it, and feedback from experts is really going to enhance your application. But also feedback from people who are non-clinicians and non-researchers, and that's not necessarily just those involved in your public and patient and community involvement groups, but also from, you know, ask other people to read your application who have never seen it before. When you work on an application for a long time, you miss the typos sometimes, or the grammatical errors that are there. And as said previously, these are the things that the panel members will pick up on, or peer reviewers will pick up on. So get as many people as possible to read your application and give you some feedback. Also, feedback from PPI groups can help you think about issues that you haven't even considered. So I had an application go to an RDS panel, and they asked me why I wasn't including fathers or partners in my research, which was a very relevant point, and actually was something that surprisingly, I suppose, hadn't really occurred to me. But actually I changed my project on the basis of that feedback. So getting as many different perspectives as possible is really helpful. I suppose the thing to consider about the peer reviewers and panel members is that they will come from a range of different specialities or methodological backgrounds. So it's almost trying to preempt what people might consider when they read your application. In terms of interview preparation, if you get to that point, hopefully, you know, take the opportunity to have practice interviews. They feel uncomfortable. I must say, it's not my favorite part of a process to be videoed and watch it back. It's a very uncomfortable experience, to be honest. And you suddenly realize that you do things like touch your nose when you're not sure about something. Or I sort of realized that if I wasn't entirely comfortable about a point I was expressing, that I sort of naturally did this. I wouldn't have got that feedback if I hadn't been recorded or somebody hadn't pointed it out to me. But you know, that feels really uncomfortable, actually. But it exposes your weaknesses, but it does build your confidence if you have to be in an interview situation. You also realize where your anxieties are about your own application, and that is something that's important to iron out early on. You have to feel confident about each aspect in order to convince a panel. So it's really useful, if somewhat unpleasant at times, to get feedback. Again, this is a point that's been raised, but it's important to know your panel, to know who your reviewers might be, to know what your funder really wants. So, you know, investigate as much as you can, find out what's been funded previously, try and get as much information as you can. You know, if you get to an interview situation, you need to know what you might be asked, what the area of questioning, the route of questioning might be. So you can never spend enough time sort of trying to investigate and find out as much as possible. What do they research? What they're likely to focus on? Might you have a statistician on your panel? What sort of methodologists will be there? What are they interested in? Ask for the advice of others. You know, you get a lot of information, a lot of really helpful information from people who've been through the same process. Find out about, and again, I think this has been mentioned, but if you get to the point of interview, find out what that process is. Obviously, it'd probably be online, but you know, I recall going into an interview panel, and I was prepared that there would be sort of 12 professors sitting around a table asking me questions, but I really wouldn't have wanted to go into that room without knowing what I was going into. I don't think panel members are trying to catch you out, but it is quite a sort of anxiety-provoking situation to go into. So anything you can do to sort of alleviate that stress is really helpful. Also, when you're preparing your application, try and make it as clear as possible. Obviously, the work that I do is focused around maternity care, and I do ultrasound scans as part of my role. So my research tends to focus around ultrasound screening. And it's a sort of personal reflection and experience of mine. For my PhD panel, I was talking about a specific ultrasound investigation called Doppler. And one of the panel members sort of affectionately referred to this Doppler thingy throughout the interview, which, you know, it just struck me that although I understood everything about that particular type of ultrasound, it was an absolutely new concept to the person who was leading the questions. And they were very kind about it, and they weren't being unkind at all when they called it Doppler thingy, but I suppose it just struck me that it's really important not to use too much jargon, to make sure that you are absolutely clear about what you are describing. And I suppose the critical thing is, again, as Judith and Eileen said, you know, panel members and reviewers may be looking at multiple applications, and it's really important that your summary is absolutely clear and easy to understand, but also sets out the importance of your work and the difference that it can make. So the other thing is, you've got to truly believe in your own project. You've got to believe in the value of your work. I think I haven't sat on a panel, but I would imagine that they can sense if you have any anxieties about your application, if there are parts that you're just not confident about, if there are parts that, and again, this is from personal experience, sometimes there are elements that you're not quite as confident about, and that's quite stressful if you go into an interview situation, if you know that you're worried about being asked about a certain part of it. And again, that in a written application, that can come through if you're not quite confident about it. So you need time to ensure that you are that you truly believe in what it is that you're presenting. You need to be enthusiastic, and there is something about practice interviews and writing your application over a long period of time where your enthusiasm maybe becomes a little less apparent in your application. You really have to demonstrate your commitment to your project and the award that you're applying for, that you're excited about your proposal, that you're, you know, you've got to be quite brave in the presentation of your ideas as well. It is a sales pitch to some degree. You need to appeal to your audience, and that includes, you know, all of the elements that have been spoken about before, your project. You need to show that you are committed to a research career, and that you believe that you'll be well supported within the environment that you're proposing to work. So this is a question, if you see me do a similar presentation, apologies, because I have talked about this before, but this is genuinely a question that I got asked in an interview. Why should we fund your project instead of a cure for cancer? And some of you might think that was a bit unfair. I know I felt it was a little unfair at the time. However, it does just raise the point that you need to be prepared for unexpected questions. You need to cover as many eventualities as possible when you're preparing an application. You need to know the value of your own work. So you need to really show that if your application is being ranked against other applications where they may be genuinely proposing, you know, something, a project that might demonstrate a cure for something, you need to demonstrate the value that your project will bring to patients or service users. What difference will it make? And just my final slide, you know, finish your proposal or your interview, if you get an interview opportunity, by presenting a synopsis of your project and your aims within the landscape, within a given landscape. So you need to finish on a high point. Remind your reviewers why your project is worth investing in and why you're worth investing in. I suppose, I know you're going to get some tips about reapplying in the next session. What I would say is the feedback you get is an opportunity to learn and to develop projects further. If you get to the point of interview, it's, you know, it's important to not take questions or criticism too personally or personally at all, and be prepared to be flexible and sort of think about your responses and present them clearly. So I hope that was helpful. It was a bit of a whistle-stop tour, and I suppose a very personal reflection of my experiences of applying for NIHR funding and also supporting others to do so. Please feel free to get in touch with me if I can be of any help to anyone, and I'm happy to answer any questions whenever it's appropriate within the programme.